Music channel. So glad to be here, guys, once again with you. Live out of Amsterdam. We are doing this 11 p.m. Central European time, but no matter whether this finds you in your morning, your afternoon, or your evening, wherever you are, I want to say thank you so much for taking the time to tune in. Time's a valuable thing, and spending a little bit of yours with me is always going to be greatly appreciated. So, welcome everybody. Good to be here. What do we got here going? Let me check the chat. Scott, what's happening, brother? How you doing? Scott says, right off the bat, builders didn't realize the potential of the guitars. Now everything is built down to a cost. There's no deals in physical things anymore. You have to have an attachment emotionally to get value for money. Yeah, we're gonna hit on that. That's actually a great point. Maddie, my two mods in the house. How you doing, Maddie, sir? Coffee and mic time. Yeah, I'm not doing the sake tonight. I'm having actually sparkling water. That's about as rich as I can go for myself this evening. Mr. Watson in the house. Good to have you here. Gentlemen, while we wait for more people to show up here in the live stream, I shall talk about a few things that have happened here upstairs right music channel in the last few days since we last spoke. I want to show you guys something. Check this out. Ben, hey, how you doing, sir? Welcome. Guys, look at this. This is my, it's not how you pronounce it, but I like to call it my screw you amp. This is a little itty bitty two by two amp. I think these are 2-inch speakers, 2x2s, and this is the Pocket Master, and this is my wireless setup, and this is my rig that I use around the house. I can take this around the house and wirelessly play anywhere. And it's I can put it in a backpack, and the Pocket Master really enhances the sound. It makes the clean tones out of this much better. Also the overall sound of it just so much better. They really complement each other, and I finally whittled it down to to this. If I had a guitar and these two things, I would be okay. Because the Pocket Master basically covers, your effects and your EQs and everything else. I think that's the other thing. Actually, I know why it improves the sound of this mini amp is because the built-in EQ in here, you have a lot more control of the EQ curve than you do on an amp like this. This just has I don't even think this has an EQ on it. No, it does not. So yeah, it is what it is. But I just said, I started looking at this sitting over in the corner, and Pocket Master sits on my board permanently. I said, hey, wait a minute. If I took that in the wireless system, wouldn't that? And yes, it does. So, I can sit at my couch, TV, have this. I can technically, be in the bathtub playing. I would advise it with an amp. It's pretty neat. Let's catch up here. Benny Larson. Hey, how you doing? Scott says today is the 10th anniversary of the passing of Newfoundland's greatest singer-songwriter, Ron Haynes. He's known as a man of 1,000 songs, is what I base my channel on. Yeah, I'm familiar with Ron Haynes in the periphery. I lied and told people I could play 1,000 songs and I wouldn't proved it. Yeah, man, you thought you were lying, but you found out you actually could. So there it is. Well, yeah, we have people who inspire us. We all do. I mean, everybody had somebody that inspired them. So, you know, you got to try to, you know, pay that forward, I guess, in some way. Maybe you can be an inspiration to somebody. So good on you for hitting that 1,000 mark. All right, I'm gonna sneeze, but I hate sneezing when I'm doing live streams because it seems so rude. I'm going to sneeze anyway. Okay, maybe I don't have to sneeze. um, yeah, that soda water is tickling my nose. All right. Um, I noticed something in the last live stream that we did. Oh, that's good stuff. Um, that I mentioned in passing about the shift in the guitar industry that occurred in the 1980s going to the 90s and then to the 2000s, you know actually more into the touching the end of the 80s and touching the end of the 90s, so about a 10-12 year period. And I thought tonight that I would get in a little bit more in depth in what I was talking about with that subject and its relationship to how things shifted in the industry in terms of guitar manufacturing. The other thing that made me think about it was, let me put this away, put this up here. This is Ellie's spot, my cat Ellie. When I'm sitting here at my desk, this is her spot to sit up here. You can't see it on the camera, but I don't think she'll mind if I put that there for now. It got me in mind to talk about this when I was showing this off the last time, the 1996 Yamaha Pacifica. And I don't think I really showed it a lot, but that neck has aged really ambered. We're starting to amber really nice because it's really nice maple that they used here. And it does have some figuring in the neck as well. Some flames, definitely. Some flames down here at the bottom. But when I was holding this guitar and thinking to myself, okay, I've felt a modern Pacific, the Pacifica 112. I picked one up. Oh, it had to be September, and I think it was in Vinendal. Yeah, I think that's the first time I picked that up. A modern one. They didn't want very much for it. They only wanted about 150, 200 euros for it. So I'm checking it out. That guitar is made in Indonesia. This one, as I pointed out in the 1990s and mid 90s, was made in Taiwan. Those two guitars do not feel the same. I always talk about a guitar having a certain amount of gravitas to it, and that's the word that I use to describe the feel of quality. It's no different than when you get into an expensive sports car. You see, the quality, the precision of the build, the leathers that are used, all of those things. Well, it's the same thing with guitars, but in a weird way you can have that level of quality but not pay the expensive sports car price. But there are a couple of caveats. Let's catch up here in the chat, see if anybody new signed in. Oh, let's see. All right. Looks like everybody's here. Good. Fantastic. I'm so glad that you guys all took the time to tune in and listen tonight. It is always a pleasure to have you folks, my community here. Always such a pleasure. Let me get into this a little bit. Tonight, I want to talk about something I know a lot of you yourselves have noticed is that modern guitars don't feel like the older ones. Just basically, just to boil it down into one sentence. And we're in this strange era where a supposedly premium $1,200 guitar, like for example, the new inspired by Gibson Epiphones, Les Pauls, about 11 or 1200 euro guitar as it stands right now over here, feels cheaper, lighter, and less convincing than something from the 90s, or I would say, yeah, like For example, that 90s Les Paul that I had in the blue Tokai. That in the case of that Tokai, I believe its original selling price was somewhere in the Goma yen territory, something like that. And it had better woods, it had better electronics, it had rosewood and not Indian laurel. Although they have switched over to rosewood on the new ones, but still, again, I told you there's grades of even within laurel and rosewood, and the rosewood that some of the examples that I've seen of those guitars, that rosewood is, not the same that you would see on the older Tokai. And so it's funny because yet and still those older budget guitars were never considered premium at the time that they were produced. And so what happened? Um, there are an actual mechanics behind how the industry changed. And I want to talk about that a little bit tonight because it really does stand out to you. You guys know, Maddie, you know what I'm talking about. A lot of you guys, all you guys know what I'm talking about. But if you go through a lot of guitars every day and you feel them, and you're in a store situation or a dealer situation, you begin to notice those things. Like, wow, these older guitars don't feel like these newer ones. And I dare say, everybody says that the '70s Gibsons were boats, but they couldn't even build boats like that for those prices that they were doing back then. Now, because they couldn't afford the wood. That's it. The reason guitars are getting lighter also has to do with cost cutting as well, as Scott was pointing out there in the beginning. Mike, hey Mike, how you doing? Love my Pacifica 611 HFM Yamaha. It's one of the best I own. It's a great deal. 629 Seymour Duncan Plus 9 P90s. Yeah, yeah, I'm familiar with that one, Mike. Yeah, I like these. These Pacificas are really, really nice. You have the P90 configuration. This is the single, 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 single. That's not a humbunger down there. That's two singles. That's why it was called the 604. But I'm really, really starting to really like this guitar because it has a quality to it. And this is stock from '96. Not a thing changed. Um, Other than Patrick did clarify that the push pull function on this was the pot had gone bad, so they just wired it so that it was just a standard tone knob. But that's okay because I never really went for the push pull thing anyway, and you don't really miss it because with a 5 position switch and this kind of configuration. Again, there's so many tones that you can get with it just like that. The push pull thing seemed a little. Anyway, they always fail eventually too, so I never liked those. So yeah, I have to say that this is one of the good examples of a guitar that was never considered to be premium, and yet I would put it up against a lot of the more expensive premium models that are out there today. And even today, the same line Yamaha, unless you get the Yamaha Professional, which comes in around $2,000. Same design as this model, except for everything is just top premium, $2,000. Um, Unless you get into that, they still when you get into that they're really nice, but in the lower ends that this used to be part of, they can't build this in Indonesia the way they built it in Taiwan. They certainly can't do it at that price point of Rokomon and Gosen Yin that this originally went for in '96. So let's jump off from that point. Um, Modern guitars aren't designed by guitar people. You know, that was one of the things that really jazzed me about when I was doing my research about the Yamaha Pacifica series is that it was completely designed by LA session musicians at the Yamaha custom shop, design shop. And their input and the things that they wanted, and even down to the tone of the pickups and things of that nature were really discussed and dissected and went into the DNA of this guitar, which is why again you know it's it's a funny thing. It really shows. I was really, it's funny. Like I said, in the mid '90s, uh, when I was jumping between LA and Japan and doing studio work in LA and then going to Japan doing live work, and that life that I did for about 2 years. And a lot of LA studios, like I said, I saw these 604s, and I never really gravitated towards them, but I did myself a great disservice for about 30 years because this is an awesome guitar, and I don't think that you can get a guitar again, like I said, that good of quality for the kind of price, kind of money it was going for. In the 1980s and 90s, even budget guitars had denser woods, heavier hardware, real metal bridges. When they had ceramic pickups, these are Alnico 5 pickups. So, these are not, again, that's not a budget thing. Even in that regard, however, when you got ceramic pickups out of budget guitars from that period, they were really nice. They were proper. Again, like the pickups in my 2001 Squire Affinity. Um, and the net pockets were tight, and factories were trying to prove themselves, and they were cheap because labor was cheap, period, in the sentence. um, Not materials. The materials you know were not cheap, but labor was cheap. So there's the first thing to think about. Catch up here in the chat. Pacifica is a great low budget guitar. 112 is a killer in its class, in my opinion. Mike says, for first guitar, far better QC than Epiphone and Squire. I'll agree with that. Again, the Indonesian ones for a starter guitar, like I said, I held the 112 in the shop. However, and you know what I mean because you have upper grade Pacifica yourself. That and I don't know what yours is, but they do not feel the same. As a beginner guitar, still I would go with it over a Squire now. Just me. And I'm really getting, as you can tell, I'm getting to be a convert to these Pacificas. I think the innovation, Scott says, and creativity of guitar building goes out the window when the manufacturer is building down to a price. Yeah, we're going to talk about that. You may just have to start keeping some of these gems like, yeah, I'm a catch and release guy, guys. I have to run a business, and I've got two cats and two dogs to feed. And again, I'm happy with the guitars that I do, the few that I do have. But this one, I have to admit, it's not just growing on me. I'm not sleeping with it yet, but I am attracted to it. So there is that. I'd say, and I really am beginning to appreciate these. I never really got into them. I never really looked at them, and now I'm beginning to appreciate it, just like you guys have for years yourselves. But today would cost more. Shipping costs more. Believe me, I know all about that. I got a shipping bill for my last shipment last time, gave me a freaking heart attack. Um, Regulations cost more. One of the reasons why a lot of those builders were using laurel instead of rosewood was because of regulations. Wages cost more, permits cost more, gas costs more, the trucks cost more. So builders compensate by reducing material quality. That's why I was talking about. And wood, hey, we got these not so good, pieces of rosewood over here. We can give them to you for a budget. Then we got these middle ones that are pretty decent, you know, but they're going to be a lot more. And then we got the good stuff. Well, the good stuff, goes just to the expensive builders, and even then, they may be trying to pass off the mid stuff as the good stuff. But that's just the truth of it. So they compensate by reducing material quality. It's not that they want to make worse guitars. Don't get me wrong. They simply can't build a 1995, I'm sorry, a 1996 guitar like this one at a 1996 price. You could not build this Yamaha Pacific next to me for Rokomon Gosenyan these days in Taiwan or anywhere. You couldn't do it. This guitar, if you tried to build it the exact same model today, just with me just basically handing and looking at it, you're looking at $1,000. You're looking at you're looking at the prices that you would pay for some American made, the Strats, and that's just because of what's there. And so, you really have to understand that buyers also expect low prices. And so corners get cut as a result. It's just you know, shit rolls downhill. What do we got here? Nakakulan. Hey, how you doing? Fred Rogers. Cheers. There's some very soft mahogany around. Yeah. Yeah. You know? And yeah, you know? And even when you get into mahogany, there's grades and there's different types. Indian laurel and Gotoba fretboards way below average, in my opinion. Rosewood fretboards just feel a lot better. Mike, I agree. I've got Jatoba. I've got, yeah, this guitar. Oh, can I reach it without knocking anything? Yeah, yeah. These Harley Benton's, that's Jatoba fretboard, and it feels hard. It doesn't feel the same to the touch that you would find on a rosewood. Just it's just a different sensation. It's a different feeling, and I agree with that too. But again, this is a cost cutting thing that these guitar makers do in order to get it in at a certain price. Well, we would love to give you rosewood, the Harley Benton guys say, but we're going to use every other material under the sun that kind of looks like it before we give you that, because we can't do it at our price points. Mike, have you ever seen a neck made from teak? No, I've seen furniture, obviously living in Asia, made from teak, but not a neck. No, no, that would be interesting. Um, Now, CNC machines have a lot to do with this. CNC machines have been around since the late 1970s in guitar manufacturing, over in the States and Japan. So it's not a new thing. Some people say, well, the quality went out when they stopped going by hand and started going to CNC. No, that's not true. That's not true at all. That's why CNC is both a blessing and a curse in some regards. Now, everybody likes to say that CNC machines make guitars better. I would say that if you look at those 70s Grecos that we've had so many through, where you can see that progression from where they were doing the handmade, and then the CNC machinery started working its way, especially in the Tokais in the early '80s, and you in the weights and the consistencies and things like that kind of stabilized. Um, I would say yes, that is true to a certain point. However, when you've got a really, really nice handmade Greco Tokai from the late '70s, you really had something. Um, but the consistency is the real key to, as I pointed out before, a good company. Can you keep a consistent output? You know, am I going to get a Monday neck, or am I going to get a Monday neck all week, or am I going to get a couple of Mondays, a few Fridays, and a Thursday thrown in there? You guys dig what I mean? And that's the thing that CNC machines do. They really just keep that consistency in your line. But here's a catch. They can cut cheap wood just as accurately as good wood. In other words, the guitar looks perfect, it plays perfect, the measurements are perfect until you plug it in, or it begins to dry out, or the neck shifts for no reason, or it really, like, you set it in your stand and when you pick it up it's got two indentations because the mahogany is so soft. Consistency like this with CNC machines, they really help hide the cheapness. That's why I'll love it. This Harley Benton that I've had forever and a day. Um, the the cheapness is there. Don't get me wrong. The cheapness is there, but the fact that it was created on a CNC machine helped hide that cheapness. Inferior woods, inferior paints, inferior electronics. Until I got my hands on it, all those things changed. None of all of that's been changed. The electronics, the pickups, the hardware, everything. I got rid of as much cheapness as I could, but CNC machines, again, like I said, is both a blessing and a curse in that regard because they keep a consistency in your line, but they also hide the cheapness until later when you get it home and you start playing it, and then you realize, okay, this has got some issues, and that's kind of how it goes. Catch up here in the chat. Mike, mass production versus craftsman, high quality, small batch builds versus late 70s. Yeah. Like late 70s Japanese guitars, like I was saying. You can feel it. You can feel it. You've played enough of those and held enough of those in your hand. If you find a good, solid handmade one, you got yourself something. You really do. You got yourself something on par with what they were doing in the Fender shop back in the 50s and early 60s. For a fraction of the price. But they can't even do that now. Mike, what do you think about promotional guitars with logos and stuff on them? I know what you're talking about, both from a collector and a seller point of view. I have an answer for that, Scott. Actually, go on YouTube, where we're at right now, and look up Pawn Stars, and look at all of those situations where somebody brought in like a Playboy decorated one. They had they've had quite a few of them in, quite a few of them in, and every single time that they brought that guitar in, the guy walks out or the woman walks out sad and disappointed. Unless it was signed by somebody notable, then the signature would have a little value to it. But to be honest with you, those things, it was like Formula One and just different styles, and not just Les Pauls, but also Strats and Super Strats and things like that. They never really seem to hold value. They never really do. It's very interesting. You know, if you can get it, for free. Like you won a lot of those things. I remember this one woman brought in. She said, "Well, I won it in a lottery or something like that, office lottery or bidding or something like that." And she thought she hit it big, but no, yeah. So from a seller's point of view, you got to find the right client. You got to find the right person who wants that, who sees it for themselves, see value. It's not going to be something that's going to cast a wide net. So CNC machines made every guitar factory adopt the same materials and the same shortcuts, and everything as a result feels a bit sterile from the 90s or the 80s and 90s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. Like I said, that shift. This is where the shift occurred. This is how it occurred. you know. What is the issue? What's the issue? Again, I point to this Harley Benton. What is this made out of? Um, Harley Quinn. No, Harley Benton. What is this? This is the SG special something like Take a look at this. Yeah, here it is. Sweet DC custom. Yeah. Prima. Wow, 269 euros this thing is going for. I bought this a couple of years ago when they first came out for 179 euros. It is now almost 100 euros more a couple of years later. That blows my mind. So that's a point there. But what is this made out of? The body is made from Marathi. Morante. I don't even know what the hell Morante is. I'm serious. Interesting. Let me do a little check here. Let me see if I can find a translation for that. Yeah, Marathi is Marathi. However, they claim that the now the fretboard on them are rosewood. This one is not rosewood. This is that Jatoba. That's interesting. So you're paying 100 euros more than the original ones, but you're getting rosewood instead of Jatoba. The body is still made out of whatever the cheapest wood is that week that they can bid on. Um, even there, you see not a consistency in manufacturing. So now I'm a little like, well, wait a minute. I want a rosewood. That's my main gripe against this thing. And now you've got rosewood. The consistency too is something that they keep, and the price just keeps going up too. That's interesting. Does anybody out there know what Meranti is? Have you ever heard of that before? The body on this one is not Meranti. It was something else they were using several years ago. So again, like I said, it's the wood of the week. I guess they've got some cheap rosewood out there now. Rosewood is cheaper than laurel now. Okay. Pawn Stars had some pretty great guitars on some shows anyway. Yeah, they did. Yeah, they did. I love that compilation video on YouTube of nothing but guitars. I think it's in two parts. And they have some great guitars, some awesome guitars. Even some of the ones that are labeled as player guitars, in my opinion, I'd love to be the player to play them. So yeah, that's one of the places that I kind of dig looking at guitars too. The wood supply today is a lot worse. In 1990s and earlier, alder was alder, rosewood was rosewood, and maple was maple, right? Now, multiple species have been renamed. Multiple species have been renamed. Lighter cuts are being used. Wet wood is rushed into production. The 70s and the 80s, and even these Taiwanese made 90s guitars, this was seasoned wood that they were using, which is one of the reasons why the neck on this maple neck has ambered so beautifully in the last since 1996, right? You know, and it was seasoned wood in the first place. You know, it wasn't wet wood. So when that wet wood dries, you get shrinkage, and it just, there's a lot of issues that come from that. And by the way, getting back to the renaming a species, like I said, that that's where it gets into Asian mahogany or African mahogany or Dutch mahogany. So Diana Ross in mahogany, it's getting ridiculous. Substitutes are sold as premium choices, and drying time is dramatically shortened. That's why modern guitars are often too light, overly resonant in the wrong frequencies, or completely dead, inconsistent from one unit to the next. Old budget guitars used to be heavier, denser cuts simply because it was plentiful and cheap. And today, those same cuts would push a budget guitar, as I said, into the 900 to in my opinion, 900 to 1,000 plus range. Again, if you were to try to build this guitar, you could not build this at the price that it went for in '96. Now it will cost you about 900 bucks to 1,000 euros to put this guitar, this very guitar with all the parts on it as is. You know. And so, you know, that's just a factor. Mike says Yamaha 500 Studio Lord 1979 that I love. Yeah, I love those too. Has a body made from agathis wood. Well, which is looked down upon till wood stops. No, let's see. Now I'm going to start digging. So this my studio guitar, my Squire, this SE, this is agathis. We believe. Fern and I believe. We believe. The jury's still a little out there, but this is agathis. Now, one of the things they didn't like about agathis is they said it's a heavy wood. This is a good weight for a Strat. It is a little heavy, but not overly heavy. And the Japanese use that a lot because they actually considered it to be a little bit of a premium, believe it or not. And so that was one of the reasons that they used that. They didn't consider it. They had no snobbery towards agathis in Japan. And obviously, when you get to China, when this was made in 2003, they didn't have a problem with it either. I don't get it. Karina or Limba, Karina. I've had a few Karina guitars, as you guys know, and I would go with that. I had no problem with Karina. Actually, I kind of liked it. Um, Modern hardware is worse than '90s budget hardware. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. '90s factories had heavier parts. I think I've shown you here before where I showed you the difference between two Squire bridges. I was showing you, early 2000 from this one. Yeah, from this one that I had taken out and replaced versus a modern Squire bridge. And they were not the same animal at all. Um, they had overbuilt metal parts. They could do that back in the '90s, but now you had like that tiny zinc bridge that I was showing in that example, and pot metal saddles, and ultralight tuners, and cheap cast blocks, and super thin trim plates, you know. And they'll put a nice shine on them, and reviewers will tell you that they're improved because they're shinier. Isn't it more shinier than those old ones? you know, but again, pick up any 90s Yamaha, Aria, Squire, any Simic built guitar, any Court built guitar, and the hardware is heavier and stronger and lasts longer. Even the cheap stuff or on the cheap budget guitars. And I've demonstrated that before. That goes without saying. I again on this Harley Benton, I replaced all of the hardware. This is all actually pretty nice hardware. Actually, pretty high quality. I forget, is it Goto parts? I believe I changed the hardware on it, and also the tuners as well. I changed the tuners as well in order to improve. Now it's a great guitar. Now that I've worked on it and I've got it really nice, it's a great guitar. And, it's just I hate the I hate the jumbo frets. I always hated jumbo frets, and I hate that Jatoba fretboard. But other than that, I have used it for recording. I used it on my last album actually. So for one or two songs, for a few parts. So you monkey with them, then they can come out all right. If I had this guitar while I was recording that album, this would have been the only guitar that I would have used to record that album with, because I can get a lot of different. I can make this guitar sound like different guitars, and and without changing a hair on it, as it stands from 1996, and that's the difference. That's just a fact of that's my professional, really opinion on it. Catch up here in the chat. Mike, are there any old guitars that are painted with bad paints that don't hut up over time? Yeah. The reason why those bursts, have that cool fade to them is because the dyes were cheap. They're bad paints and they wore out over time. Same thing with some of the Strats. They're having a little problem with their paints because they're transitioning from what's the name of that company that they used? Oh, DuPont. Yeah, DuPont paints, I believe. Yeah, over to they were trying different things. So yeah, but we consider that to be cool now, and some cats will pay a premium to have their guitar, scraped to look like that, which was a mistake in the manufacturing. Are Japanese guitar paints different than North American guitar car paint? Um, well, the EPA stepped in the 1970s and began regulating lead paint. I remember that because when I was a kid, that was a big thing. It made you afraid of the walls. Like, oh my God, is that wall lead paint? I better not stand next to it. You're a little kid and you're afraid of lead paint. Don't need the paint off the wall. You get lead point poisoning, lead paint poisoning. And I was thinking to myself as a kid, who the hell would want to eat the paint off of? Who eats dry paint chips? I've never been that hungry. But over in Japan, no such thing. So their paints that they were using, and China as well, were just as toxic as the stuff they were using in the States in the 50s. Yamaha SG guitars from the 70s, 80s would cloud on the headstock. Yep. So just a lot of production things. Yeah, that's correct. Yes, that's clouding. Tokais too, by the way. Yeah, I've seen some Tokais. Limba and Carina are both the same tree, though. Carina in the U.S. name for the white limba. They appear part white black. Yeah, there you go. See, again, reclassifying, renaming, it's the same thing. I prefer, in that case, and that would be the upper part. I like the white limba. I like the white limba. I'm sorry, the white Carina or the white limba. See again, like I said, it's the same freaking tree. And they start splitting hairs. I like the looks of the wood. In terms of tone and things like that, I can't even speak on that. But in terms of look, I prefer the upper part of that tree. I was going to make another really bad joke there, but I'm trying to edit myself these days, guys. Hey, bro, you should do a 700 ring challenge. What the heck is a 700 ring challenge, Steven? How you doing, by the way? Good to have you here. Johnny Dregs, how you doing, sir? Good to have you here. I don't know what you're talking about, man. What's the 700 ring challenge? Please. Rig? Oh, 700 rig con. Uh, yeah, man, I could blow that away with this one. This is my rig right now. And you can achieve this. This is all I need right here. A Pocket Master and a 2x2 and a wireless setup. And how much does that come under? This could be had under 100 euros. Maybe 100 euros, 120 euros total. It costs for me to put that together, and it's great. It sounds great, man. I'm not kidding. I'm going to do a video on that this week. This is so funny to me. I decided I'm going to shoot a video on it and demonstrate using the Yamaha here. But yeah, I could do that challenge. If it's under a 700, I got them beat. I've said it before, but kind of respect everything Yamaha, all the rest stars, the speakers. Yeah, I got a lot of respect for Yamaha, Johnny, myself. Then he says, I have no idea if there is a quality difference, though. Um, you know, I don't either. It's just that in that case, I thought you were asking from a looks standpoint. From look standpoint, I prefer I guess, the upper part of the tree, what they're calling Carina. But from quality difference, so there's that. The isn't that a B? The Harley Benton now has rosewood on it. Isn't that something? That's just crazy. Yeah, it's $100 more. There's still 24 medium jumbo. And now they got different fresh. It's probably a different monster. But in any case, that's just a consistency thing. They can't keep consistency. And you know, again, this just points out that the quality control mattered more in small factories, which were a lot of these 90s guitars were made. And they used better materials because those materials were cheaper at the time. Labor was cheaper at the time. They weren't trying to hit 500,000 units a year, you know. Production was much more slower, much more well thought out, and in the in the implementing of the design, uh, they made sure that they brought in experts, musicians, to comment and make improvements before they went into production. And competition was fierce, but it was honest. Yamaha wanted to beat Squire. Squire wanted to beat Simic. Simic wanted to beat Court. And everybody was trying hard. But then you got into the 2000 to 2010 period. And CNC becomes universal. costs start rising, wood regulations begin to tighten, and factories start to scale up production. I always talk about that the court factory in Indonesia. I was horrified to find that they have 3 shifts a day, and they're going through a tractor trailer of wood per shift every day. Then the 2010 to 2020 period, everything becomes good enough. Hardware gets cheaper. A lot of the electronics actually are dispensable, almost as if they're an afterthought. They're like, yeah, well, they're going to rip these out and put in X, Y, and Z aftermarket anyway. So let's not spend a lot of time in investing in these electronics. And uh, instead of bringing in musicians and guitarists and whatever to be in the design production process, they start bringing in marketers. Get rid of the musicians and start bringing in marketers. And thus, marketing replaces innovation. Then 2020 to present hits. Inflation hits. Shipping costs explode because of the tariffs and the shakeup that's caused. And brands start switching around features. Just like I just discovered with this Harley Benton DC Custom. Oh, I see it's the DC Custom 2. Oh, it's such a shame. I only have the DC Custom 1. Well, I guess they made some improvements. They changed the body wood to the mystery wood or the mystery meat of the week, but they put in rosewood, but they're charging you exactly $100 more than I paid for mine. Now, have I put $100 worth of changes into this thing? You damn betcha. Yeah, I have. I just thought about that. Yeah, you know, I put in new pickups, new hardware, new electronics, new tuners, and I still don't have rosewood. Isn't that a B? Isn't that a just straight B? Mm-mm-mm. Just can't win. And you can laugh about it. You can be funny about it, but it's just a reality. Mike, what's your thoughts on Shure guitars? I think Shure guitars are fantastic. Again, it just depends upon where in the level of Shure you get. Johnny says, do you all see the new Gretsch budget guitars? Pretty sweet, in my opinion. It's a great area for the value of the dollar. Yep. Again, I'd like to plug it in, play it. I'd like to see what the Q, with what they're hiding, if they're at that price. But I did see it; they do look great. Gretsch is a great bang for the buck on the Indo guitars. The made in Japan Pro guitars are top drawer stuff. Expensive, but seem like they are worth the bread. Yeah, they're worth the bread, like I said. And years down the line, they're going to hold their value, where a lot of stuff is going to fall off hard, hard. So you end up with the 900 plus guitars that are now, as a result of all of these things that have occurred since the early 2000s. The guitars are lighter, they're cheaper feeling, and they're filled with compromises. Cheap, yeah, we got CTS pots, but they're the cheapest. They're bargain basement seat, barely. You can call them barely CTS pots because there's grades in that. Whereas with a lot of these guitars from the 90s and the 80s and the late 70s, the electronic components that were put in there were top drawer, top drawer. I love that line, top drawer. And that's just a fact. That's actually an Eric Foreman line. He liked to say that in that 70s show, top drawer. But it's the truth. And while older budget guitars still feel solid, it's because they made them before this era of cost cutting. You know, 90 Squires, as I've shown you, were built like tanks. A $300 2002 Yamaha feels closer to a $900 guitar today than a $600 guitar today feels to anything, especially that mid-price Fender out of Indonesia, Strat. Old Korean Epiphones feel more premium than their current mid-tier Gibson counterparts, which would be the Epiphones. You know, that's just a fact of it. Early Chinese guitars made under Taiwanese oversights, as I pointed out in my last live stream, are shockingly good. Shockingly good. And this isn't nostalgia talking here. This is manufacturing realities. You can't beat that reality. It's not, oh, you're just saying that. Of course, new target, new, we got better guitars now than we had when I was growing up in the 90s. No, you didn't. You don't. You don't. Unless you start paying a high premium for them. No, you had better budget guitars in the 90s than you got now. You got better budget guitars in the 90s and you got better, some higher end stuff now, actually, in a lot of cases. So, I pulled out a couple of guitars here just to show you that transition, you know, um, and it's a fact. So new guitars aren't worse because nobody cares. They're worse because the economics changed. The economics changed to produce them. And old budget guitars weren't secretly boutique. They were just simply built during a time when materials were cheaper, factories were hungry, production wasn't rushed, and accountants didn't run the plant, you know. And you see what happened with Gibson during the Norland period when the accountants started to run the hen house. It wasn't so great. They made a lot of changes that a lot of people didn't dig. And they've been clawing back away from those changes ever since to go back to what they were doing previously. So, that's why they're stagnant. They had to go they had to go back to where they were in order to get back to the future. That's weird, but that's really how it is with them. So that's you know why so many people are rediscovering that these older instruments and saying, man, this just, why does this feel, better than the newer ones? Why does this neck feel better than the new ones? You know, why does this, the electronics and the pickups sound better than the newer ones for a supposed budget guitar at its time? Well, now again, like I said, this is upper mid tier, but still, Rocco Malien was a respectable price for a guitar. It's what we used to pay for Epiphones. um, so it's just the fact of it, guys. It's just, it's that manufacturing process that changed. And I see they're slowly trying to claw back. Again, Epiphone is putting in Rosewood. Apparently, so is Harley Benton. Harley Benton is like, damn it, if Epiphone can do it, we can do it. And so, there it is. But still, in all, uh, you cannot get past the economics of it. They don't build them like they used to. Yeah, that's a very true adage. Musical companion, welcome. I've seen 80s and 90s made in Korea carved top models that were starting to split because they just use wood filler. Not all, but a good number. Yeah, you can see some Japanese in the, Les Paul models, especially when you start talking about the 450s and and below that have problems too, where they're starting to split. I'm not saying that they're all, creme de la creme, but when you get into the higher models, you don't see that. In the case of the two Korean Les Pauls that I just Les Pauls that I just had in, you that would not happen. That would not happen. Has not happened. But point well taken. Um, it's just an issue of finding a budget guitar from that period if you can, and seeing if it appeals to you. You still may like a modern guitar more, but it is undeniable that the manufacturing process and the quality of the components that were used to put that guitar together are going to trump anything that's made today. I could extend that out, frankly speaking, to cars. That's why, cars look so generic today. When I was growing up as a kid, there were so many different styles of cars. Now everything looks the same. And the materials that they make them out of are cheaper. They swear up and down that they're safer and lighter and more fuel efficient. But, you know, I would prefer an older gas driven car myself that's made from, 20 tons of steel over a modern car. That's just me. But it extends to a lot of things. They don't make it like they used to, really, would be the summation of tonight's discussion, because that's exactly what this is about. Johnny says, what do current shopping prices to the US look like? Ballparkish. Shipping prices, I'm sorry, to US look like. They don't look like anything at all. I mean, there was a period there where we weren't shipping anything at all to the States. They weren't accepting shipments to the States. I'm sure that's resolved, but the prices, everything is up. I'm paying 10% more in my shipping prices, so I could assume it's going to be the same for the states. For a guitar, my bad. No problem. I understood what you meant. Um, you're shipping a guitar from EU to the states. If they're accepting shipping now, I'm going to say it's going to probably be somewhere 130 to 150 euros cost. You don't pay any, and then of course when it gets to the state, there's a danger of there being a VAT put on it. Ballparkish, as you say. All right, I think we've beat that horse to death, and I've proven my point. And boy, howdy, it's a good point. Is that I don't care what you tell me. You can tell me that they're making better guitars now than they did back in the day, even on the budget level, and I'm going to say bullshit, because the manufacturing cost over the last 30 years, the history of that don't play out to that to be true. Um, I am obviously a lover and a purveyor and a promoter of older guitars, because I don't think that they need to make another single guitar ever again. There are enough for every man, woman, and child that ever wants to play guitar or not to go around. But I certainly, in the reality of the situation, am going to say I would buy an older guitar before I bought a new one, especially if you're starting out. These Yamahas, as were pointed out, any in the Yamaha line, even the 112, is a great guitar for a beginner to start out, or even an intermediate player that would be happy with. Probably even pro too. There's pros out there playing Harley Benz all the time. Sure enough, on stage. So again, just realize that you're doing better in the secondhand market for a lot of reasons. You're helping the ecology. You're saving your guitar from just gathering dust. You're saving yourself money, and you're getting really good quality. Sorry, guys, didn't mean to give you the finger there. I need to start counting like this. Well, I saw a guy. You do it like that because when you start going like this, either way you start, you're always going to end up on that middle finger. So my apologies. But you guys get my point. Something to consider. Thanks, guys. Thank you so much for showing up this evening. I have to admit to you, today I get into these where I've got so much to do and so many things on my plate and so many things that I'm concerned about. This is like, how am I going to take care of that? That I get paralysis sometimes, and I just decide I'm not going to do any of it. Or give me something else that I enjoy doing in order to take my mind off of that. And sitting down and writing today's script and putting it together, certainly, and now presenting it to you, certainly made the day much better. So I want to thank all of you guys for taking the time to listen to it. This presentation tonight: why new guitars seem worse and why older budget ones are better. If you guys like this and you're joining here for the first time, don't forget to hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to comment down in the comment section. I do reply to every comment personally. And I will see you guys this Sunday for Sunday at Mike's. You take care. Bye bye.